Live and early. Wake up with First Up every weekday morning at 5 on RNZ National.
Back with Lynn Freeman in a moment. First, the forecast from Met Service to midnight. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula have isolated showers. Could be heavy, becoming confined to Northland this morning. Clearing this afternoon, though. Waikato to Taumarunui, including Taupo and Bay of Plenty, mainly fine. Taranaki to Kapiti Coast, showers becoming confined to inland Whanganui and Mount Taranaki later this morning. Taihape, Gisborne to Wairarapa and also Wellington showers, some heavy with snow to 500 metres affecting some roads. Showers and gale or severe gale southerlies gradually easing. Kaikoura Coast and Canterbury, showers becoming isolated this morning. The remainder of Marlborough, also Nelson, Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine. Otago and Southland, a few morning showers at the coast, fine elsewhere. And the Chatham Islands, rain easing to showers this afternoon. 6 minutes past 10 on RNZ National. News and weather again at 11.
Kia ora, Nicola. 9 to noon continues with me, Lynn Freeman, here for Catherine Ryan. In about half an hour, Leilani Tamu reviews Te Manu Huna a Tāne, The Hidden Birds of Tāne, edited by Jennifer Gillam and Eugene Hansen. And the Writers' Festival continues at 11:45. It's our reading this week. It's 6 minutes past 10 on 9 to noon. Mia Walsh was 19 when she began work in the sex industry. She'd just been fired from a job at an insurance company and saw an ad in the newspaper offering good money for erotic massage, no sex. After the next few years, she worked her way through many of Sydney's parlours, all the while battling serious drug use and chronic mental illness. Mia Walsh has written a powerful memoir, an unvarnished account of those chaotic years and her journey to her new life as a writer. She studied creative writing at the University of Wollongong and has published 3 science fiction novels under the name of Marley Jane Ward, the first of which won a Victorian Premier's Literary Award. Mia's with me from Sydney. Mia, hello and good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you so much. As we said, you've published 3 books already, but had you always thought you'd want to tell your life story?
I think even as I was living it, I was planning to write it down in some way.
Well, you had many moments, I guess, where you could have thought, yeah, that'd make a great story for there's a lot happening in it. But you've taken yourself back, say, to 16 years ago. Was it difficult to put yourself back into that situation?
Yes and no. It was a bit emotionally hectic to write it, but I'm a bit emotionally hectic most days. So maybe it was the book and maybe it wasn't.
Do you think distance is a good thing, though, for a memoir? You know, have a few years to digest it and think about it and put it in context and then write about it? Because sometimes we're seeing, at the moment, I know some young singers seem to push out memoirs when they're still in their early 20s.
Yeah, it was nice to have the time to think about it, and I don't think I could have written it at any other time. But at the same time, I can understand people putting memoirs out sort of earlier in their lives because, you know, as a writer, quite frankly, or I'm not quite sure of the examples of singers, but I know that as a writer or an author in Australia especially, you don't make a lot of money. So if you've got a good story to tell, can be a way to help you earn a living.
It's also powerfully honest, and I guess when you sat down and decided to write this, you made that decision to tell it as it was. I know you've changed names. I think you say in the front of the book, even the fake names you've changed. But did you go into this?
I changed even the fake names several times.
Yeah. But did you go into this deciding that, you know, you're gonna tell it all as it was?
I wrote it as if no one would ever read it, but knowing that people were going to read it, if that makes sense at all. So I had to sort of hold those 2 opposing thoughts in my head to be able to be as honest. But at the same time, I'm also a chronic oversharer. So it was not that difficult to be so honest because that's just the kind of person that I am. And it's really funny because a lot of people keep telling me, like, your honesty is so refreshing, but it's like, well, what else would I be? A liar?
Yeah, that's true. You were just 19 when you decided to enter the sex industry. Take us back to those times. What was your story up until that point?
Oh, well, I ran away to Newtown in Sydney with $50 in a bag to live my dream of being a little alternative, um, late 90s, early 2000s Newtown person, which was a definite, um, is a real sense of place in that time. And I decided to try and make it work, and I got a job in an insurance company, but I was never gonna be able to hold that together with how, I guess, sick I was. So the decision to do erotic massage just kind of felt pretty natural and normal. It's just like, "Oh, this is the next thing that I'll do." And it really helped me kinda get through that period of my life where I was quite, um, addicted to drugs and I was quite mentally ill. It provided like a place where I could feel, accepted and found some kindred.
You were told, Serena, I think it was, when you made your first approach to a parlour, that you had a great look. So describe the 19-year-old you.
Well, I barely ate. Um, I barely ate any solids that weren't ecstasy pills. Um, I I looked very young, and I think that that's what she was trying to say. I've always looked younger than I am, and especially I think now I'm starting to catch up. In my late 30s, I'm catching up to actually looking my age. But you know, at the time, and for many years after, until I was 25, I used to get the child's fee on the bus. Um, so I think what she was trying to say is like, you look quite young, and that's great. But it was probably the first time in my life that I'd ever felt pretty, because I spent a lot of time, I think I wasn't very and a very attractive child. So sort of, being able to accept that I looked okay and was even could even called pretty, that felt really wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of this throughout your memoir, which is heartbreaking, really, the kind of the self-doubt through to self-hate. And when you think about that, can you figure out where that stemmed from?
My therapist would love it if we could do that. Look, I have some ideas, but I generally sort of I don't talk about like my childhood very much. You know, I had a bit of a difficult childhood, like no huge traumas. I think just a long, constant grind of stress, from growing up with a mentally ill parent. And I think it's a mixture of nature and nurture, as to why I am the way that I am. But I was also very heavily bullied in high school, so I think that implanted. I think we downplay or don't recognize how much that can affect a person. I think I'm still dealing with the fallout of the way I was treated, by my school cohort, um, and I think that that's where the real self hatred came into it.
You were so young when you made this decision to go into erotic massage, and I think you were still kind of figuring out what it in fact meant. But I
Oh,
was
I had no idea. I had no idea what it meant. I didn't know what it was about.
you knew you didn't want to be a stripper though, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I'm a terrible dancer for one, and I'm better at well, I went and interviewed to be a stripper, but it just seemed like a lot of work for not a lot of money, and I'm not very good at hustling. Like I can't make like when I've worked in retail, I'm
Good morning. I'm delighted to announce that I've made a couple of minor changes in my shadow cabinet that I'd like to update you all on this morning. The first, with the departure of Paula Bennett to retirement, that has given me the opportunity to promote Dr. Shane Retty up to number 13. In addition to his current portfolios of tertiary education and Treaty of Waitangi negotiations and of course employment, I have asked him to take on the portfolio of associate drug reform. He'll be doing that, of course, with Amy Adams, who I've asked to take the lead on that over the next few weeks through, of course, to the election, where there will be a significant focus on that issue, and then, of course, beyond the election, depending on what the country chooses. Of course, there will be further significant work to do. That has freed up a position in my shadow cabinet, which I have offered to Simon Bridges. As you know, when I announced my first lineup, I had signalled that should we win the election, he would be in my shadow cabinet. This has given me an opportunity to bring that forward. He, of course, had expressed an interest in foreign affairs, and I have agreed to that. I think he'll be a significant contributor in that role, and I very much look forward to his work and focus over the next few weeks. Clearly, a man of that seniority, I would have an expectation that as we go through the election, and again, if we're successful, opportunities for Simon to further proceed up the cabinet rankings. Nikki Kay, I have asked to take over the position of spokesperson for women, and she will, of course, do that extremely well. Happy to answer any questions. Well, again, it was, from my perspective, the opportunity for me was to look at the position number 13, and I had been thinking quite a long time, as some of you would know, on the opportunity to promote Shane Retty. He is a fantastic contributor, a significant intellect, not only in the National Party but in this Parliament, and many had observed that he was a talent that should have further opportunities, and I tend to agree with that strongly, and thought that that was an opportunity for him. Of course, that opened up the slot number 17, and it gave me the opportunity to stand behind a commitment I had already made that post-election Simon would be in Cabinet. And of course, Foreign Affairs is a significant portfolio, and he will do it well, regardless of the position that he has. What's that, sorry? Oh, look, Jerry understood. I mean, ultimately, you've got to make these calls as a leader. I am very lucky with the talent that I had at my disposal. I'm sure there are other parties that would look with envy on the choices that I've got to make in terms of who to promote or otherwise. But look, Jerry understands. He's made a tremendous contribution in terms of foreign affairs, both as minister and as recently, over the last few years, as spokesperson. But we're in the campaign period now. He's incredibly focused on that, pulling together a very competent and strong campaign, as you'll see unfolded over the next few weeks. So it made sense.
So wasn't it? So you didn't actually consult with Jerry Crowley. You also told him that.
Of course I consult. Of course, you know, you're just putting words in my mouth. Of course I consult. I mean, that's you have conversations with your colleagues. The question was, did I have to wrestle? No, I didn't. You have a conversation, you work through the situation. He's supportive. Sorry. Well, it's you knew at the time there was a conversation that I had right at the time when I took over, where I thought if there was an opportunity for Simon to contribute, where I thought perhaps it would be best place. I made a decision at the time that I would stay with what I have. I mean, clearly, he signalled that he would like the opportunity should it come up in the future, and it's my judgment, actually, now, many weeks on, that this actually is an opportunity to provide Simon with the portfolio that he would like, a reflection of the contribution that he has made as a former National Party leader, the status that he has in our party, and the status of that portfolio, and hence my judgment today. again, it's around judgment for me of focusing on the opportunity for Shane Retty to step up. I had signalled when I made the announcement in the first place that I saw him as someone who would be moving up the rankings. I think it's an opportunity for him. It reflects his strong contribution to the National Party, and in that movement to 13, that provides an opportunity, as you see, and I think it's appropriate that Simon has it.
How much consideration did you give to the criticism of the lack of diversity on the front bench when deciding to promote Shane Retty?
Well, actually, as I've mentioned before, the front bench in terms of the physical seats are the first 12. There's no change in that. From my perspective, our shadow cabinet is an incredibly talented one, and Simon's addition to that only strengthens it. I look at it through the lens of talent and capability, and the net effect of that is a diverse and very strong shadow cabinet, and indeed a very diverse and very strong 55. That's exactly, well, because the opportunity that sat in front of me was a small change on the basis of Paula Bennett stepping down from number 13. We are 8-9 weeks away from the election, and I decided to make a small minor reshuffle, and I was very clear when I was asked in the last day or two that I wasn't going to change the front bench. I was just going to make a minor change in terms of who had position 13. That freed up another position, and I saw the opportunity for Simon to step forward. Oh, you'll have to wait and see. We'll see what decision we make should we be in that position. Well, I think firstly, acknowledgement to Paula Bennett. I think she was very effective in that role over the last year or so. It doesn't change anything in fundamental direction because, of course, as you know, we're a number of weeks away from the election, and it's a public referendum, and the public will have a reflection on that as they do. But what I hope from both Amy and Shane is that you will see from their perspective a very informed and considered view from our perspective around the challenges of the legislation. I'm not sure whether all of our caucus will ultimately get to voting against it. I suspect they will, from what I've heard. Obviously, it's been a personal conscience issue to date, but certainly I'm against it and have been consistently so. I'll campaign strongly for jobs and economy and an alternative national government to run this country in the next 3 years. No, I said right at the time when I made my announcement in terms of my front bench and the total rankings and the list of portfolios of everybody, that I was holding the view that he was going to spend a couple of 3 weeks reflecting on where to from here. As you all know, he made it very clear that he wanted to be back in the game and to be very much the MP for Tauranga, and I support that 100%. He's a fantastic MP and he's a fantastic contributor to our caucus, and I've recognised that today by giving him a Foreign Affairs role, which is a significant role, as you know, in any government.
When he was mayor, he took some interesting positions on the CCP in China in terms of his successes, particularly on his trip over there. Have you had any discussions with him around the party's position on foreign policy issues to ensure there is alignment?
Look, no, I haven't, but I'm sure that that will happen in due course. Sorry? Well, as you saw from Dr. Retty's significant contribution in the debate, actually, probably a number of months ago, our focus was on significant regulation around the provision of medicinal cannabis only. That was the framework that he had put an extraordinary amount of work in. In fact, from our perspective, should have been the focus of the government in terms of their legislative program. They veered away from that. They are more focused on the broader issue of legalising, and from our perspective that's not an area that we wish to go. But his approach, and the approach that we were supporting at the time, was a very robust, tight regulatory framework for the provision of medicinal cannabis. But as you saw, that never got support through the Parliament. Oh, well, let's see. Like I say, the question that's in front of the country is clear. We'll see how that vote goes. My expectation of both Amy and Shane is to put our perspectives very clearly around the question that is put. What happens post the election will be, obviously further work would need to occur depending on the result of the election and the referendum. Oh, look, that was a position at the time. It's not something that I am particularly focused on or see as a priority. Well, as always, that needs to be run in conjunction with the perspective of the front bench and the wider team. So, I'm sure there'll be alignment should those issues become front of mind. But I suspect things have moved on since then. Well, yes, that's our position, but I mean, things have moved. That debate has moved on quite significantly. We held that was what we said at the time, but like I say, my focus is on jobs and the economy. It's not on that issue at the moment. Oh, it's very professional, as you'd expect it to be. Oh yeah, but we've known each other for a long time, so we both represent the same city, the east and west, so no, we've got a very professional relationship, not a problem there at all. Yes, it's absolutely fine. What's that? Look, I have no idea at all. It's not something that has come across my desk. It's not something that gets talked about. I tell you, our team's focused on the 80-something days we've got to pull this thing off. Yeah.
Promoted a bunch of their widely executive top positions within that. Why did you not do that?
Well, I think that where I landed in terms of the front bench, the roles that I gave the 55, I think talks to the talent that we have in our team and the capacity that we've got to be able to run a very strong campaign against this government. I didn't go through when I decided who had what role and made mental checks as to who may or may not have voted for me. I put together a team that were particularly in the front bench. A number of them were very strong performers in the Simon Bridges era, and they're still very strong performers in my era.
Do you think it would have helped with the unification of the caucus had you done?
I think our caucus is very united.
Do you think the government has been vocal enough against what's happening in Hong Kong and the security law trying to pass?
Look, I think from my perspective, I think they've got the balance pretty right. I mean, they made a pretty clear signal a couple of weeks ago around their concerns over what was happening in terms of potential constraints through the proposed new legislation on the democratic freedoms of that community, and I think they positioned that quite well. And I think at the time, Audrey, I signalled support for their general intent. I think it's a watching brief, and we've got to make sure that if anything changes in that area, we remain pretty robust in our promotion of New Zealand values and expectations.
And Bridges will be up against Winston Peters in that portfolio. Would you expect him to stick very much to foreign policy rather than the man?
Oh, look, it'll be fun to watch. Well, it's always fun to watch when those two go head to head. And on issues relating to New Zealand's place in the world, I think it'll even be more so.
Nationals running ahead is attacking the Green Party tax proposal as a Labour Green proposal.
No, not at all. In fact, Paul Goldsmith already made clear that we're not part of and would never support the ACT's flat tax suggestion. The issue is that when you put those same questions to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, they prevaricate. They don't. No, of course I won't, but there's a specific question we're talking around in a tax context, and we've made it clear that's not something that we'd entertain. But it's very different when you look at a Green Party 20-page manifesto in terms of significant new taxes for this country, and you put the question to the Prime Minister as to whether she would rule out income tax rises, wealth tax rises, and she prevaricates and says, wait to the campaign, I won't answer it as Prime Minister. That's dodging it. What's that?
Does your family have assets in excess? Would you be liable for tax?
Me personally? No. No, mate, you need to come and have a look at my house in Pies Par. Last one.
Do you think it is honest for the National Party to suggest that Labor is going to tax the dog?
Pardon?
You're running an attack ad at the moment that says Labor and the Greens are going to tax your dog. Is that honest?
Oh, look, we're in the... I actually haven't seen that particular one, but I think the... Yeah, but we've got lots of ads going on. I'm not personally signing off every one. We're reinforcing the point that as you accumulate your assets above $1 million under the Green Party, tax is coming quite significantly. And when you pose that question directly to the Prime Minister, she won't say no. What's that? Well, let me go and have a look at that. I haven't seen it. Yes, last one. Sorry? Me personally? Yeah. Oh, when I was at university a couple of times. Sorry? Oh, look, I don't know. Who knows? I'm not going to go through the ins and outs of the referendum that's coming. I've got a personal view and I've shared it. Thank you very much. Have a lovely afternoon.